Jesus freak here. I would hope that it's understood that despite my near exclusive use of the King James in my videos, and the fact that I do strongly push the King James, I'm not a KJVO. A common conception among many KJVO supporters, some will go so far as to say they think it's the best translation out there, or they think, it's the only one anyone should use in English or even in any language. Some go further to say that the KJV is the new autographa, or that it's been purified and is superior to the originals. And I'm going to call bunk on that. I don't think that's true. But there's reasons I push the KJV. The first is I don't want to be offending people by my choice of translation. And I want to choose something that's safe, that's not encumbered by copyrights, although admittedly it is encumbered by a patent in England and Scotland. That we have a lot of common culture that's built up around specifically the King James language. It would be lost if we threw away the KJV. And I feel that having one standard for use in the church, even if you're using another version at home, cuts down on the issue of confusion when someone's, when you have, say, a group of people and they're sitting down with the Bibles and they're reading the Bible and they all have different things written there. And, God's not the author of confusion. So it's good to have a standard. But I'm not saying that the standard should be to the exclusion of all else. I've said before, I like the language of the RSV. I have some issues with the people behind it. Some of them weren't exactly Orthodox, and some of them weren't even Christian. And I have issues with the text base they used. But I think that so far as it is, it's a fairly solid translation, and a fairly, it's in a respectful, literate English. And this can't be said of a lot of other modern translations. It certainly can't be said of the CSB, of the NIV, of a lot of other translations. The only modern versions I can think of that really are translated in anything resembling a style befitting of Holy Writ, the RSV, the ESV, and the NASB. NKJV, because it's tied so much into the KJV language. Now, my usual recommendations I've told others is, start with the King James. And then when you're stronger in the faith, and you're not likely to be led astray or have your faith shipwrecked by the text issues, the translational issues of other translations, then you can use other versions. That's just my opinion. Now, there's other places I'll say, I have very strong negative opinions about things. For example, I'd never recommend anyone use a paraphrastic translation. I'd certainly never recommend the New Living Translation, which I call the New Dead Translation, because it's, heavily paraphrastic beyond the points in most other translations. And I'm not going to recommend the Message. I've heard that the guy behind the Message was horrified that people were using it as a standard Bible. And that's the right attitude. I'm certainly not going to recommend something tied to a cult like the New World Translation or the Passion Translation. I don't know how much I've said about the Passion Translation, but I feel like the guy behind that, Brian Simmons, fancies himself a 21st century Joseph Smith. Now, if you know anything about Joseph Smith, you know why I said that. You'll know why to be on your guard against something like that. But at least with the King James, you know what you're up against. You know you're not gonna run into any false doctrine from the text alone. People using the text, that's another story. But from the text alone, you're not going to run into any issues. Now, I understand, the language is going to be a bit of a challenge. If it's really hard for someone, I might recommend them that New King James instead. Which I tend to see as kind of a crutch to lead into the King James. But I feel that understanding the language is very helpful in its own right. So, I don't really see the ye olde English as really that much of a fault. So, I have a sort of moderating opinion on this stuff. It's just like my opinion about handling the name of God. I very rarely utter it at all. If I do, I use a traditional anglicized form used in the KJV. Most of the time, I'm just going to say God or the Lord. And if I'm translating, that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to do what Tyndale did. I'm going to write the Lord or God in capital letters. But all of this is just my opinion. People can be brought to Christ from any version. And what I say only holds true for English. You might find it surprising that someone pushing the King James in English is actually pushing the Nueva Biblia de las Americas in Spanish instead of the Reina Valera. Because I base things on my own evidence and my own beliefs and my own opinions on these things. I don't just parrot what everyone else is saying. I come to my conclusions on my own. As we all should, take the word, read the word, understand the word, but don't just take someone else's opinion for it. Be like the Bereans and study it for yourself before you make your decision. Because the Holy Spirit will help you make that decision. Jesus freak out.